Continuing government, your job to make it good, from You Can Change the World, The Christopher Approach by James Keller. And again quoting from the congressional record of the same date, they represent only a fraction of the total 20,000 on the payroll, yet enough to do serious damage to American foreign policy if the allegations in the report are reasonably accurate. At least 10 of the employees were formerly employed by the important wartime branch of OSS, Office of Strategic Services. A number of them were with the Office of War Information and transferred to the State Department when OWI went out of business. A few are held poor risks because of morals, at least one for an alleged criminal record. Well, don't let people get poor just because they've committed crime. That's going to breed more crime, right? 3 have connections in various ways with the Soviet embassy in Washington. One is a former employee of the embassy. Another was working for the Soviet Purchasing Commission when employed by the State Department. Several were recommended highly by Professor Harold J. Lasky of England, left-wing Labourite. 5 are known to have signed the communist election petitions. 12 are listed as being close associates or having connections in some way with suspect Soviet espionage agents. 1 is listed as pro-German during the war years, while in the department, practically all of them are suspected as members of the Communist Party or having communistic leanings. A study of the report reveals that the employees involved are scattered through every branch of the service. The heaviest infiltration has taken place in the Office of Research and Intelligence, Foreign Service, and Office of Information and Education, the latter especially in New York City. Many of the 108 individuals are permitted, Congressional Record, April 22, 1948, to handle top-secret material. If the employees are as questionable risks as painted in the report, they have managed to step into the right departments. Step into the right departments is correct. Witness the following, taken from the Congressional Record of April 21st, 1948. Another important official in the Division of Occupied Areas, whose wife is with the Division of Research and Intelligence, is listed under case number 59. The Security Office, late in 1946, said it had insufficient information to warrant their dismissal, adding, however, in view of the fact that both are known to be close associates of individuals linked with Soviet espionage activities, this office will continue to keep their cases under active consideration. The wife was approved for top-secret material, February 11th, 1947, because if there is not enough to dismiss them, then they cannot be denied access to top-secret material. An employee of the Foreign Service, number 63, comes in for this comment in the report. A memo indicates that another governmental agency has received information that he was a recognized section leader of the Communist Underground. A subsequent check with this agency, September 30th, 1947, developed that in 1939, when he was with the Foreign Service Journal, he had a small Communist Party unit meeting in his home. The source of this information said that he was a leader of this Communist Underground unit. His investigation is pending. Our form of government tolerates anyone in our country to think as he pleases, but putting people like these on the government payroll at the taxpayers' expense to wreck the very government which they have sworn to uphold is nothing short of fantastic folly now and national suicide in the future. Nowadays, there's a threat to people saying, "No, you can't criticize Russia or China. That threatens our democracy." It's like, you're an elected official and you're saying that stuff? Weeding out is not enough. However, merely weeding out the subversives is only half the job. Getting sound-thinking citizens in their places is a national must. The reason for this is, again, only too obvious. Weed out the Reds without following up that weeding out process with positive, constructive action for good. And what happens? The subversives, in the words of a prominent government official, will merely send in their second team. To make a comparison, if you want to get rid of weeds in a garden, plant something in their stead. If you want to get rid of darkness, bring in light. If you want to get rid of disease, initiate measures that will ensure health. If you want good government, and the overwhelming majority of Americans do want sound administration, then you must work to put in people with sincere, honest, truly American ideas. If you cannot go in yourselves, you can follow the example of the young woman, Christopher, a mail clerk in one of the most important branches of our government service. Her job is intimately concerned with vital correspondence from overseas dealing with reports on conditions abroad. This woman makes it her business to see that all the mail reaches the proper authorities for inspection and analysis, despite the fact that 3 others in the department make every effort to divert those reports unfavorable to their ideological sympathies. And sometimes they do succeed in relegating important missives to the wastebasket. Such actions, on an even wider scale, may help explain certain strange decisions by some officials on matters of governmental policy. And I definitely know that stuff like that can happen with the mail, as things delayed to keep people from attending meetings and all that other stuff. But regardless of what your job, just don't do the quality of job that just keeps you in the thing, if you can do better. Notwithstanding this continual opposition, however, this clerk has done tremendous good just by being on the spot and working as hard for what is right as others are working for what is base and false. I'm working alone where I am, she says, but there's a stimulating and satisfying thought in knowing countless others are working, as I try to do, to support and safeguard the interests of our government. The devotion to duty of this clerk in a minor position can be best summed up in one word: patriotism. It is a word too little stressed nowadays. In fact, the godless have conducted such a shrewd campaign against the true meaning of the term that many otherwise good people feel a trifle apologetic in discussing it. So falsely identified has it become with the worst in all that is considered old-fashioned and unprogressive. Well, sometimes old-fashioned is just fine. It's not whether it's new or not in terms of ethics. And it's like, can you really have new ethics? Maybe new material that the ethics are practiced with. But, and nationalists too. It's like, well, you look after your national interest first, just like you look after your family and whatnot interests too. It doesn't mean you can't be good for the world. And it doesn't mean you have to be like prejudiced or something too. It's just, thank God. However, patriotism still stands for something among tens upon tens of thousands of loyal employees in every branch of our government. I'm not sure if the number's that high anymore. Well, at least not the major ones, right? But that there's still a bunch, just a minority. One branch that might be mentioned has maintained this great tradition in its finest sense. In its service are the highest type of Americans. Its job never ends. Its work unceasingly, 365 days a year, at helping preserve the God-given rights of all our citizens. The branch referred to as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, a daily living testimonial to good government in action. To it cannot be applied the report of the Civil Service Commission, which stated that in one 9-month period, an estimated 811 federal employees were ousted from their jobs when they were found to be disloyal to the United States. How they get that way. At first glance, it is puzzling how these 811 and many more like them ever got that way. However, some of the edge to our bewilderment is taken off when it is realized that not a few of these people, particularly the younger men and women, have grown up ignorant of the Christian heritage which is America's. The proof? According to the United States Office of Education, instructions concerning the Declaration of Independence, the main charter and guiding spirit of our governmental structure for 11 years, from 1776 to 1787, when, the Common Era, when the Constitution, based on the principles of the Declaration, was adopted and ratified, is required by law in only 9 out of the 48 states: California, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Jersey, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Wisconsin. The conclusion to be drawn from this startling fact is contained in the words of Woodrow Wilson. No more vital truth was ever uttered than that freedom and free institutions cannot long be maintained by any people who do not understand the nature of their own government. This being so, the time has certainly arrived for every God-fearing citizen in our land to take steps to see that this condition is corrected at once, to see that all our people, young and old, are thoroughly schooled in all that their democracy meant in the past, and will mean to them in the future. As an American taxpayer, you have both the right and the obligation to insist on results. If you live in a state that does not demand explicit teaching on the Declaration of Independence, you can start the ball rolling to see that it, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, become integral parts of the policy and teaching of every school from kindergarten to university to which you pay taxes or make gifts. And, it's perfectly reasonable to expect immigrants becoming citizens to gain some of this knowledge too. Don't be satisfied with mere teaching by rote. See that the spirit as well as the letter is imparted to students. Be concerned that all of our young people should know the high price paid for liberty by our forefathers, and be ready to pay the same price if need be. Never take your country for granted, said Alice Duer Miller, because men have broken their hearts to get it for you. If you are in one of the 9 states that do require teaching of the Declaration, check to see how it is actually being taught. Check to see whether it is being sidetracked, ignored, or belittled. Leave nothing to chance. Don't be satisfied with an incidental reference to it in a government, history, or civics course. Insist on its being required teaching, and make sure it is not being taught by someone who explains that it was a good statement for the 18th century. Because such statements are kind of silly, whether it was good or not, completely, kind of remains sort of the thing. It's like racism. Just because racism is popular doesn't mean it's like, well, it was the 1800s or something. And it's like, no. You can see these people kind of, persuade every organization to which you belong or with which you are acquainted. Veterans groups, labor unions, fraternal organizations, women's clubs, parent-teacher associations, youth movements, etc., to concentrate on the one object of having these basic fundamentals taught and respected in all phases of local, state, and national activity. This means more than mere lip service, more than hanging a copy of the Declaration on a wall, more than a colorless reference to the mere letter of these fundamental documents. It means the infusing of the living spirit of the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights into every segment of private and public life in the United States. And remember also the inspiration of all these documents, the Creator of the world, and of everything and everyone in it. To repeat again the words of William Penn, those people who are not governed by God will be ruled by tyrants. The time has certainly arrived for us to insist that every employee of our government, federal, state, and municipal, live up to both the letter and spirit of the oath they take to uphold the Constitution, and that he or she take no part in subversive activities which would undermine our republic. Failure to live up to such oath would make one liable under law for dismissal on the ground that whosoever falsely swore would inevitably be committing perjury. Americans have always interpreted most liberally the rights of minorities to believe and to express their beliefs in every political or economic doctrine, with few and rare exceptions, but no sound-thinking citizen has seriously argued that the 1% who would wreck our democracy should be brought into the government. The godless are not pressing into federal and state offices to protect the right of a minority to express their beliefs. The right of expression is already theirs. They do not express their true loyalty, but hide it. Instead, their presence in our government has nothing to do with freedom of opinion. They are there for one purpose, and one purpose only, to hasten the day when they will attempt to overthrow our republic, to wreck freedom. The following is Standard Form 61, revised April 1st, 1948, as promulgated by the U.S. Civil Service Commission, Chapter A6, Federal Personnel Manual, which details for the civil service employee the oath of office, affidavit, and declaration of appointee. A. Oath of office. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. B. Affidavit as to subversive activity and affiliation. Do further swear or affirm that I am not a communist or fascist. I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States by force or violence or other unconstitutional means, or by seeking by force or violence to deny other persons their rights under the Constitution of the United States. I do further swear or affirm I will not so advocate, nor will I become a member of such an organization during the period that I am an employee of the federal government. Existence of this form, its wording, and its stress on calling upon the Creator of the universe to witness the truth of what is being said, as expressed in the phrase, so help me God, should be especially made the knowledge of every citizen in our country, especially should it be recognized in organizations and groups which concern themselves with the administration of the government. Together with the foregoing, there should be greater emphasis on public acquaintance with the terms of the Hatch Act, which deals with membership in subversive organizations. Section 9A of Public Law 252, 76th Congress, approved August 2nd, 1939, provides subversive activity and affiliation. 1. It shall be unlawful for any person employed in any capacity by any agency of the federal government whose compensation or any part thereof is paid from funds authorized or appropriated by any act of Congress to have membership in any political party or organization which advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government in the United States. 2. Any person violating the provisions of this section shall be immediately removed from the position or office held by him, and thereafter no part of the funds appropriated by any act of Congress for such position or office shall be used to pay the compensation of such person. There should certainly be greater public awareness of the Executive Order 9835 of March 21st, 1947, which provides, in part, that 2. Activities and associations of an applicant or employee which may be considered in connection with the determination of disloyalty may include one or more of the following. Okay, well, be nice to hear that list. Well, I mean, we can look that up, but F, membership in, affiliation with, or sympathetic association with any foreign or domestic organization, association, movement, group, or combination of persons, designated by the Attorney General as totalitarian, fascist, communist, R, subversive, R, having adopted a policy of advocating or approving the commission of acts of force or violence to deny other persons their rights under the Constitution of the United States, R, as seeking to alter the form of government of the United States by unconstitutional means. The penalties for subversive activity and affiliation are set forth in Standard Form 61 U.S. CSC as follows. Various appropriation acts contain a provision prohibiting the use of appropriated funds to pay the salary or wages of any person who advocates or who is a member of an organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States by force or violence. These acts provide that an affidavit shall be considered prima facie evidence that the person making the affidavit does not advocate and is not a member of an organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States by force or violence. These acts provide further that any person who advocates or who is a member of an organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States by force or violence and accepts employment, the salary or wages for which are paid from any such appropriation shall be guilty of a felony and upon conviction shall be fined not more than $1,000 or imprisoned for not more than 1 year or both, and that this penalty shall be in addition to and not in substitution for any other provisions of law. Schooling for government. While it is true that a nation, like a city, may never catch up with its dreams of the future, it is certain that proper guidance and training of fine young Americans for public service and government are the best guarantees against both corrupt and subversive inroads. They are the most positive assurance of good, honest, democratic administration now and in the future, as the New York Times, in an editorial deploring the lack of realization of this truism, pointed out. It is a curious fact that as personal numbers and government costs have risen, as the services expand and new concepts of responsibility take hold, we have paid little more than attention than we did years ago to the training of young men and women specifically for careers in civil service and the higher posts in government. A young man may set his goal to be a physician and work specifically toward that end from his high school days. He may do the same with law, with engineering, with teaching, and an infinite number of other specialties. But how rare is it to hear a young man say that he is studying for government? In the early years of its history, America was able to draw on the best men in the country to serve the whole nation in positions of public trust. Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, and many others came at the call of duty to any office the nation needed to fill. Since the end of the Civil War, we have seen a growing disinclination on the part of our citizens to enter public service either for long or short periods, although millions of our young men and women have made and will make any sacrifice to give up any advantage to serve in the armed forces when our country is in danger from without. Today, our danger is also from within, and we need men and women who will serve without the stimulus of war, without public recognition, perhaps, without public appreciation, in positions which are often as important to the survival of our nation as is the service in the armed forces. To go into government sometimes may mean, of course, a loss of some portion of your normal earning power, yet such a seeming disadvantage is far outweighed by the many advantages you individually will receive. In business, profit and loss are the criteria of success. Secretary of Defense Forrestal once commented In government, your rewards for successful work are much less tangible. They come from the inner satisfaction of taking part in the most important and powerful and complicated team in the world, and not from individual compensation. There are scores of examples which could be cited to illustrate this point. In one particular comes most readily to mind. It is the case of a European diplomat whose own words tell far better than anyone else's the tremendous task he has undertaken. This man, a Protestant, makes impressive reference to the work of the Christophers, an American friend of his in California, a Catholic, was the one who sent him the Christopher literature mentioned in the letter which follows. And I have just returned from the Congress of Europe at The Hague, where, much to the amusement of my political friends, I choose to serve on the Cultural Committee, in preference to either the political or economic. The Cultural Committee was made up of churchmen, artists, writers, and thinkers from 20 European nations who were charged with deliberating upon the nature of the common stock of ideas and morals in Europe. I thought this the most fundamental issue in any attempt to unite Europe. A civilized society cannot be maintained by political and economic arrangements alone. Men aren't like ants. They need to believe in their civilization and be willing to make sacrifices to improve it and defend it. So we decided that a Charter of Human Rights must be accepted by all Europeans. Of course, I said that behind the Charter would be required the inspiration and strength of a revealed religion. Yeah, aren't they replacing religion with the cult of the state by that, right? And I quoted the action of your Christophers in pressing that the Declaration of Independence be taught in all states. This impressed the Congress, who were at least two-thirds Christian inwardly, as well as outwardly. The atheists put up a poor show and were soon defeated. I don't think there's anywhere near as many atheists as people think there are. But people who don't want to be under the authority of this church or that church, your particular niche in government, direct personal participation in a specific position is, of course, the most constructive means of shaping the character of your government, as has been pointed out previously. Without dwelling further on this particular phase of your participation, there are two principles which it would be well to bear in mind. One is that a public position from the lowest civil servant on up to the President of the United States of America is a public trust. If there be corruption in high places, there will be cynicism in low places. People will begin to look upon all government as rotten, will learn to look upon democracy as an ugly farce, will lose faith in democratic leadership. For you, as a Christopher, to hold public office, whether as a tax collector or as a congressman, means that you will have to devote yourself to strengthening the belief of the common man in the efficiency and honesty of free democratic government. In short, put public welfare above personal gain. Don't go in to do well for yourself, but to do good for others. A second principle for a Christopher is to prove to the people that they can be free and still be fed, that great liberty and good living go hand in hand. Failure to meet the economic needs of the people through an intelligent use of government can create a loss of faith, just as surely as corruption in government destroys interest in our free way of life. Economic chaos creates political chaos, and out of political chaos arise dictatorships and world upheaval. If, however, you can not go into the field of government yourself, you can still be listed in either of the two classifications, the electorate or the loyalty group. The electorate. By the electorate is meant all those who are eligible to vote. To be part of the electorate is to be the inheritor of a great tradition, a precious God-given right, achieved after a long struggle and much suffering. Well, difficulty, maybe, without struggling, without suffering. Because difficulty doesn't necessitate suffering. I just don't like that use of the word. That doesn't distinguish it. But just as man tends to neglect other aspects of his inherited rights, so does he tend nowadays to neglect his right to vote. He abuses the privilege by neglecting it. In the presidential election of 1900, for example, 75% of those who were eligible to vote did vote. In 1944, however, only 55% voted. In 1946, only 30% made use of their ballot. Realize what this means. If only 30% of the population votes, then it is possible for a body of human beings composed of only 15% of the total electorate to elect its spokesman to govern the nation. That means 85% of the electorate would be taking orders from 15% of the people. Anyone could hardly blame this 15% if it were finally to conclude that a dictatorship would be as acceptable as a democracy, since 75% of the people don't care to exercise their democratic rights. The consequence of this abstinence from the polls is far-reaching. In the past, it has made it easy for political machines to be set up that were little interested in the public good. Secondly, totalitarian elements find it not too difficult to slip their standard bearers into public office when the great mass of electors stays home on election day. And these totalitarians make their task even easier by using democratic lingo and democratic processes to subvert and destroy democracy. In short, failure to use your ballot smooths the way for the corrupt. Failure to use your ballot smooths the way for the corrupt politicians, for the selfish lawmakers, for the subversives to dominate the machinery of government while they are still in the minority, a condition which is quite contrary to the entire spirit of democracy, where the majority decides public policy while still recognizing minority rights. I don't know, did they get to the point where they weren't just voting for, politicians, that they were actually voting for policies? The Christopher finally must be a voter. 2, he can get his family, friends, and neighbors to vote. He can become a canvasser on election day to help turn out the vote for the principles in which he believes. He can carry his citizenship with a sense of genuine responsibility.